colleagues in the media, let me thank you for responding to our invitation to be here. I'll just introduce the persons here who I think most of you know. To my far left is Senator Mark Golin, our spokesman on justice. Beside him is Dr. Wickham McNeil, who is our spokesperson on tourism. And beside Dr. McNeil is Senator Sophia Fraser-Binns, who covers land and the environment portfolio. Our new party leader is to my immediate left, Dr. Peter Phillips, and to my right is our chairman, Comrade Bobby Pickersgill, and I'm Julian Robinson. Our party leader will make a statement followed by Senator Fraser-Binns and Dr. Wickham McNeil, and then we'll be open to questions after.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the media. We have called this press conference to emphasize our position as a party and as an opposition that the new property tax regime proposed by the government is untenable and cannot be allowed to stand. The burden imposed on the people, all the people, by this new property tax regime is too great. We must consider that, first of all, the government currently collects about $6 billion from property tax. What they are proposing is to raise the collections by 66%, by 2/3, in the course of 1 year. And it is the extent of this increase that they are seeking, which in fact makes this particular tax regime oppressive, bearing in mind also that it comes against the background of tax increases already announced in relation to fuel, motor vehicle taxes, electricity, health insurance premiums, and the like. It is a burden that is literally impossible to bear, especially for critical groups in the society, including our pensioners, our small businesses, our agricultural producers, and tenants who live or operate from rental properties. The fact is that overall, the tax arrangements that have been announced by the Minister of Finance in the budget package and now added to in this property tax package are anti-business generally. They raise the operating costs for businesses unduly and are going to certainly have a negative impact on critical sectors, agriculture we mentioned, tourism, particularly the small hotels to which Dr. McNeil will speak, and the BPO sector, among others, manufacturers and all the others, not to mention the effect that it is having on citizens generally, especially those who are seeking to purchase property or those who live in rental properties. I think it's also important to emphasize that the relief measures that were announced by the Minister of Finance are really very difficult to operate and in fact offer very little relief. For example, if you are appealing evaluation, and Senator Fraser-Binns will speak to this in further detail. If you're appealing a valuation, the law requires that you pay 75% of the assessed value before you can, in fact, have your appeal considered. So that's not really much of a relief. And in the interim, interest is running up on the amounts that have been assessed and are not paid, and it takes an inordinately long time, and your operations, the predictability of your operations are in doubt as a business. Agricultural producers, many of whom are facing in excess of 100% increase in the assessed taxes. Getting 50% derating means that they are already going to face more than 50% increases, even if they get the derating, which is not certain. So, as I said, the relief measures are certainly inadequate for what is being proposed in this new regime. In desperation, some of the spokesmen for the government are trying to assign blame to the previous administration, to suggest that somehow we are responsible for this. It boggles the mind, because really the government, in announcing all the good things that we had underway, such as the hotel construction, never assigned responsibility to the PNP for those benefits, and everything that we didn't do because we were conscious enough to recognize that these measures could not be implemented without more careful consideration. They tried to assign to us and to blame us for their lack of effective governance. But let me just point you to the December 15 staff report under the 10th review of the extended fund facility, which came out in December of 2015, 2 months before the election. This is the last review. On page 9 of that, paragraph 14, in talking about the need to improve the efficiency of the tax system and to counter an eroding tax base, the staff report says this, and I quote, "The existing property tax should also be modernized." There is no suggestion that there is any benchmark, there is any requirement. It says the existing property tax should also be modernized. It goes on to say, and I quote further, "The authorities," meaning the government of the day, "are weighing these options and are conscious of minimizing the impact on lower income groups of any tax policy change." They also, the authorities, meaning the government of the day, the PNP government of the day, also noted that frequent changes to tax measures involve sizable compliance costs, especially for small businesses, and could erode confidence. The simple fact of the matter is this: the reference year for the new valuations is 2013. That is the year when all the staff of land valuation went out to look at properties and do their valuations. It took approximately another year and a bit to prepare the report of this valuation. In 2015, just before the 15-16 budget was due, we received the reports, and in seeking to determine what ought to be done, the government took the decision that we would, as an interim measure, raise the rates on the previously existing valuations in order to keep pace with inflation generally. But what it would also have meant is that for the future, we would have had to have examined the rates. We would have had to examine the impact on particular communities and segments of the population. And it is because that information was not available in time to make such a determination that we did not opt to implement the 2013 valuation. A new government is in place. They have had more than a year on their own to decide how they are going to treat with this. There's no compulsion for them to use the particular rate structure that was inherited. There is no requirement that they don't put any caps in it to ensure, for example, that particular groups of pensioners or that particular groups of taxpayers, ratepayers, don't face increases of up to 1,000%. You can cap all those things. What we're seeing is an example of bad governance, which has resulted in an oppressive condition on the ordinary people of the country who want to pay taxes but don't want to be oppressed by the taxation regime that they face. This, quite frankly, cannot be allowed to stand, and we in the People's National Party oppose it and oppose it strenuously. I'm going to ask Senator Fraser Binns to speak in greater detail just about how the relief measures are really implemented and what practical effect those measures that are announced would have.
Just shift it.